You know, every time I look at this controller, I only have one question. Why do I have this but not an actual N64? So, how do we evolve from games like Super Mario World and Mario Land 2? Well, we could focus on new characters like Yoshi and Wario, but what about the main Mario series? Well, we do have this fancy new console we're working on at Nintendo, and we can make really cool 3D graphics with it, a lot more realistic graphics than with the FX chip on SNES. Plus, its controller, while odd, is still much more advanced than any other controller we've made. We have 6 buttons on the front, 3 full shoulder buttons, and a brand new analog stick, as well as our classic D-pad. So let's give old Ann Miyamoto one last roll in the director's chair and make the first fully 3D Mario platformer a launch title for the N64. And why not, let's give this kid who worked on Link's Awakening and Yoshi's Island the assistant director role. I mean, his given name is Yoshiaki, he was born to work on Mario. Thus was born Super Mario 64, and thus was killed 2D gaming for like a decade. Do you think this is what the Sphinx was actually talking about? So, for our story here, we have a fairly simple setup. Peach, which is now her name in America, invites Mario over to her castle for some cake, but it turns out she's actually been kidnapped by Bowser. Because it's the Sunday, I guess? More accurately, the castle itself has been taken over by Bowser, with all of its inhabitants now trapped inside its walls. Now it's up to Mario to save the day and kick Bowser's behind. Again, standard weekend for Mario. There are some interesting twists, like a noticeable lack of green. Yes, Luigi is nowhere to be found. He was originally planned to be included as a co-op partner, but those plans fell through, despite what conspiracy theorists will tell you. It says Eternal Star, you numbskulls. Peach is also fully voiced, unlike every other NPC, oddly enough. We also have a voice for Mario for the first time in the main series, provided by one Charles Martinet. This man is 67 years old and he's still voicing about half the Mario cast. Hi, Sorio in editing here. This script was written and recorded back in July, so, yeah. Miss you, Charlie. And of course we have levels inside of paintings, because I don't know why. There are some that aren't in paintings, of course, like one in a miniature house, or through a puddle, or inside a clock. It really makes you think, maybe there's a reason we never went inside Peach's castle before and didn't do so again for over 2 decades. I'm not one to talk. My back door is a portal to hell and it's not even pretty to look at. Visually? I don't know, man, it's an N64 game. It doesn't look as advanced as a Series XS5, but it still works well. Like, I don't know if there's anything I can really critique about the visuals, at least for the console they were originally shown on. Now, the modern ports and emulated versions, there's more to critique. I think both versions of this game on Switch kinda look worse than they should, since the draw distance for Mario to go low poly is painfully small. Hell, draw distance in general is a bit of an issue, at least for coins and enemies. It's not always a big issue, of course. I think standard gameplay works fine, but for example, certain cannon shots through coins are a lot harder than they should be since you just can't see most of the coins. But again, this is the N64, a console that could barely run Doom. It's understandable. So yeah, the graphics are fine, the sound is solid, the game as a whole is very good. I want to say that the entire thing is aged super well. But then we get to the controls. Okay. So, judging this may be unfair, as I am approaching this from the perspective of someone who played later games before this one. And on one hand, it isn't fair to judge a game's controls by the standards of its sequels. But on the other hand, my lord does this feel bad. Mario's controls feel weirdly loose, like he's working with ice physics even when he's not in one of the ice levels. The jump has this weird delay to it, like the game doesn't read the input until Mario's on a specific square. There's a wall jump, but you have to have a run up to the wall and then press the button as soon as you hit the wall. It's not as unforgiving as you might have heard, but it can still be too precise. To dive, you need to get a running start and press B. To long jump, you need to get a running start and press Z, then A. To slide kick, you need to get a running start and press Z, then B. Oh, and if you dive like I mentioned, you can't jump with the A button, you have to find a way to stop sliding. And the camera just doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can rotate the camera freely around Mario, sometimes you can move the camera to the side briefly but have it snap back into place after a few seconds, and sometimes you can't move it at all without going into a pseudo first-person view. And like, I get there's only one analog stick, but surely you could have used the direction labeled C buttons a little bit better for camera control, instead of flipping to an even worse mode. It probably sounds like I dislike this game, doesn't it? I'll be honest, when I first started playing this game, I really wasn't liking it. Maybe some of this stuff is just the Switch's N64 emulator being bad, but I also think a lot of it is from the original game. Originally, I figured I'd dislike playing this game, but it's just too damn fun. I'm gonna be real with you, I think this game has some amazing level design. Bob-omb Battlefield is a wonderful first level that teaches you the basics of combat, exploration, and platforming in this game, whilst Fortress is surprisingly tricky given its floating position and introduces even more verticality than the mountain in Battlefield. Jolly Roger Bay, well, it sure is a water level. Coolcomb Mountain is a fairly fun wintertime level with a tricky slide to ride down that has a ton of potential shortcuts. Big Boo's Haunt translates Mario World's ghost houses to 3D beautifully, while Hazy Maze Cave is one of the most complex and interconnected levels in the game. Lethal Lava Land is... it's fine. I find it weird that the first two missions are both based on fighting the new bully enemies, but it works. Shifting Sandland feels open in a very interesting way, and flying around with a wing cap through this one is a ton of fun. Dire Docks sure is another water level, but now you have this section where you can pull jump around, so it's alright by me. Snowman's Land is another ice level, this time with the set pieces of a giant snowman to climb and freezing cold water to avoid. Wet Dry World is basically 2 levels in one and actually manages the shifting water levels concept better than any Zelda game, while Tall Mountain sure is a mountain. Okay, they aren't all perfect. The final 3 courses are definitely the most unique. Tiny Huge Island is based around a size gimmick similar to Mario 3's World 4-6 with giant or tiny enemies depending on what version you're in. Tick-Tock Clock has you platforming through the inner mechanisms of a grandfather clock, and depending on where the hands on the clock are when you enter, you can manipulate how and even if certain parts of the level move. And finally, Rainbow Ride, where you can fly on a magic carpet up to a flying ship or a big house in the sky or other platforming challenges. And that's not even getting into the bonus stars, some of which have their own mini-levels to get them. It's all so fun! I love this game. I don't think it's perfect. The controls are still funky and some of the stars are kind of just gimmies. Like 3 of the secret stars are just handed to you by toads around the castle. If you talk to every NPC, congrats, you get a head start. Overall, I think I prefer Super Mario World still, though even comparing the two feels impossible. Like, some would argue whether this is even the same kind of game. But still, this game is great. Though I would also like to give an honorable mention to the DS remake, Super Mario 64 DS. The lack of an analog stick does bite, and the lower resolution makes this less than optimal, but overall they added a lot of interesting stuff to that version of the game. Still, this game easily stands out among the early titles as a wonderful Mario game. If only I had an actual N64 to play it on.